everybody, welcome back to Art a la Carte. Many of you know me as a YouTuber artist, but I'm also an art teacher physically. I go and teach art classes to people, and I thought it would be fun to do a version of one of my art classes for you guys here on YouTube. So for anyone who wanted the experience of what it's like to be in one of my real life art classes, this is what I would teach. So the first thing that we talk about is warming up and getting things loose and ready to draw. And the reason that this is really important is because if you jump right into drawing, sometimes you're really stiff. So here is an example of using the ideas of what I teach in drawing, but drawing really stiffly. The first class that I ever teach anybody is to find shapes in things that you're drawing. Anything you want to draw is going to have a shape in it, whether it's a circle or a triangle or a square or a squiggly line or a lima bean or the map of Guam. It's in there, or a combination of a couple of different shapes. So finding those shapes and using them to then interpret what you're drawing. So here I'm drawing a fish, and as you can see, I'm using some nice curved lines to make a lemon shape. I'm using a triangle for the fin and even little triangles for the top fins and bottom fins. I'm sure they have more specific names, but I'm not a fishologist, so I don't know the technical terms. But the first fish is really stiff. I haven't warmed up my hand. I haven't looked at reference photos. I'm just going off of memory. And while yes, it does have a fishy-like appearance, it's not great yet. So let's loosen up a little bit. And at the very beginning, you saw me doing some sketches and some drawings really fast. It loosens up my hand, but also holding your pencil a little bit looser. Each of these fish, I'm doing 3 different fish, and as you see, each one I'm getting a little bit looser. I'm letting my hand not be as intense. I'm letting the kind of the flowing motion go. And I think after a few of them, I'm getting warmed up and it's getting better. After I've drawn and warmed up my hands and I want to sit down and start actually drawing and making a complete drawing, using reference photos is great. Whether you get them from books or magazines, which I guess is another form of book, you look at them online with parental help if you're underage, because yeah, safety first. Or maybe you have a collection of photographs, but using a photograph to be able to draw what you think you're drawing can help you so much. Next, let's talk about tools. I advocate to draw on whatever you feel comfortable with, whether it's just plain paper, sketchbooks, whatever. But if you're going to be using a medium, you need to have the right tools for that. Today we're going to be working with watercolor, so I have these tiny little watercolor papers, but it's really good with watercolor and I really enjoy using them, so sometimes I will bring them for my students to use as well. So we've warmed up, we've looked at reference photos, and now we're ready to create a fun watercolor piece. Now this is a great project if you have never drawn with watercolor, painted. If you have never painted with watercolor before, this is a great one to go with because you pick out whatever subject you want. I'm going to use a fish. I'm going to draw a goldfish, but it's not going to be gold, but we'll get into that in a second. But right now I want you to think about, what would you like to draw? Cat face, a panda head, a horse running, a butterfly, whatever it is. Find some reference photos, do a couple pre-sketches up, and then get your watercolor paper and begin sketching out your design. Now I am drawing here and I'm probably going a lot faster than a lot of you guys are ready for. So at any time during this video, just hit the pause button, rewind it if you need to, but remember that I totally go at your speed. So that pause button is your best friend. Draw up just a basic pencil sketch of your design or your idea that you have. Keep it simple. Don't try to paint your Mona Lisa, especially if this is the first time you've used watercolors. So I'm just doing a little goldfish. I have some nice flowy fins. It's a fun when you look at a reference photo and you draw not just what you think things might look like, but now you're actually knowing how many fins they have. I didn't know they had 2 sets of fins on the bottom, but they do. I'm also, though, giving myself freedom to make this my own fish. It's not like a specific kind of fish, so artistic liberties is always a fun thing. Here's a pro tip. If you have a horrible time drawing circles, use something as a guide or a grid. I'm using a plastic cup. Now, I do have a video where I talk about how to draw circles, so if you would like to check that out, you can find it in my video archives. It's entitled How to Draw a Circle, so it works. All right, we have finished the actual pencil drawing, and now we're going to ink this in. The reason I like to ink in my drawings before I paint on them is sometimes when you are watercoloring, the pencil lead can just kind of blend in and you lose your lines, which could be an effect that you really want. But I want to see the lines, so I'm going to ink my drawing in first. An important thing to think about when you pick out your pen is it water soluble? Meaning when water hits it, is the ink going to start going everywhere? I want to find a pen that is waterproof. So this Copic multi-liner is waterproof. It's perfect for what I need it to do, and I'm going to use that to ink in. You'll also notice I am inking in really fast. That's the magic of video editing. I can speed up this drawing because the inking process in here alone took probably close to half an hour. So again, if you want to pause this video while you ink in your drawing, feel free to do that, or you can just watch the video while you're inking it in and then rewind it back to the next step when you're ready. When you're done inking in your drawing, it's time to erase your pencil lines if you want that look. Just a tip, make sure that your ink lines are completely dry because you don't want smudging of your ink lines. That's so sad when that happens. Let's go ahead and get our watercolor tools. So I want some clean water, some paintbrushes, and my paints. I'm not a stickler on that you have to have this brand or that brand, but if you'd like to see the brand that I recommend for all of my students, I'll leave an Amazon link to the products that I recommend in the description box below. One thing that people get really frustrated with watercolors is it seems to go everywhere and it's hard to control. So the trick with watercolors is to remember that watercolor paint is going to go only where water and gravity let it go. I want to paint the fish one color, its eyes another color, and the circle behind it a third color. So I'm going to keep my water on just the section I'm going to paint at one time. So for that, it's just the fish. So I'm going to add a water base over all the whole entire fish. And if you kind of tilt your drawing towards the light, you can see the shine and see where your water is. Depending on how much water you have on the paper, your paints are going to do their own thing. If it's just a little bit of water, your paints are going to stay pretty much where you place them. But you'll see that my fish has a lot of water on it. So when I touch the paintbrush to the water, the paint just spreads like so beautifully. If you wanted it to spread beautifully, I do. But if you wanted your paint to stay in a small little puddle, use a little less water. You may also notice that I'm not scrubbing the paint across my paper. I'm letting the paint kind of flow and go where it wants to. It's kind of a style or effect that I want. Now, if you are wanting more of a flat color, then yes, you're going to want to drag your paint across the paper to get a nice flat color. But I like the swirly and twirly motions of my watercolor. Another fun thing to do is to introduce 2 different colors or 3 or 4 different colors and create a nice pattern or gradient. So for the top I have a kind of a magenta purple, and on the bottom part of the fish I'm going to introduce this bright lemony yellow. Again, I'm not scrubbing the paints together, which would just mix and blend the paints. I'm allowing the paints to interact with each other, which are going to create a cool swirls, gradients, and patterns. The more you touch these paints together, the more it's going to blend and turn into this kind of brownish color. So unless you want a brownish color, don't overwork your paints. And this is where practicing and playing with your paints is so important. The more you work with watercolor and play with them, the more you're going to realize, oh, if I do this to the paint, this is the result. Or if I do this with these 2 colors, it's going to do this. If I add this much water, this is how it's going to turn out. By changing even one element, it changes how these paints react. And those changes can change depending on what type of paint you use and even what paper you're using. So knowing your tools and what they do is really important. And it just takes time and practice and a lot of fun playing with it. You can layer up quite a lot of color in your watercolor painting. So now I'm introducing a vibrant red. I'm putting those on the tips of the fins and watching them blend in. You'll notice though, at the top of the back fin, there's a lot of water there. And because there is a lot of water there puddling, as I put my color there, the colors are merging and kind of blending into this one kind of orangey-ish, magentish color. It's not this swirling motion anymore. So that's something to take into consideration. A lot of times we just keep adding water to the painting and more and more and more water until everything is just kind of floating away. You want to control how much water is on there. So a couple of ways to do that is one, give your painting a little bit of time to breathe and dry. You can also help the drying process with a blow dryer, and you'll see that later on. The only thing with a blow dryer is the wind is a little bit hard, and sometimes that can push your colors around in places you don't want it to go. So you might want to take that a little bit more cautiously. But the third way to get rid of excess water is to take a dry paintbrush and dab it into the puddles and let the water absorb into the paintbrush and then dry it off on a tissue. The only thing with this is when you're pulling up water, you're inevitably going to pull up color, so your painting's going to get a little bit lighter. You can actually take your tissue and dab it onto your painting and pull up the water and paint. But just make sure that you don't touch the outside of where you want the color, because it's going to stamp the color wherever it goes. So you've pulled up the water and now your painting is too light. Where'd all the color go? Well, let's put some more color back on this. These are called washes. With watercolor painting, you can add as many washes as you want, depending on what type of paper you have. If you're painting on a really thin paper, your paper might go, okay, I've had enough. Start buckling or rolling or peeling or getting a big hole in it. That's why when I know I'm going to do a watercolor painting, I use a really tough, strong watercolor paper. Between each wash, or glaze as some people call them, you can let it dry and then add in more and more and more, getting a nice, super vibrant color. Again, I'm going to go through this a little bit faster because this painting took me about an hour to do, which is about the average length of one of my classes. A lot of people ask me, do you need to take art classes to be a good artist? And while I say yes, it's great to learn. Anytime you can learn something, whether it's art or any kind of class, knowledge is an awesome thing. If you don't have access to a physical art class, there are so many resources out there, including videos on YouTube or other programs like Skillshare, not sponsored. But check those out and don't get discouraged if you don't have an art class. With the internet and books and things like that, there's so much information out there. But also just the fun of playing, trying out different colors, trying out different art mediums. Don't be afraid of messing up. In my art class, that's one of the biggest things. I accept students where they are. I just care that people are creating art and having fun. That's awesome, as long as you are moving forward, not giving up, not getting so frustrated that you completely stop doing art. Never stop. Always move forward. So our fish is completely dry. I blow dried him. I made sure that the paper is nice and dry. And now I'm going to begin painting the other parts of my painting. It's important to make sure that your fish is completely dry, because if you start painting something else, those colors are going to merge together and it's going to turn into a yucky mess. Fish is dry. I then do the same steps with the background bubble. I wet that down and then apply the paint. And there we go. We have a finished fish. I would love to see your guys' completed watercolor pieces, so make sure to share them with me on social media. I have all of my social media information in the description box below. If you're brand new to this channel and like these kind of videos, please give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any other videos. And as always, thank you guys for hanging out with me in my art class today. Keep drawing, keep painting, be creative, and we'll see you in another art class video or any kind of video that I do. Bye bye, guys.